Welcome to another edition of Unpublic. It is the best edition of it each week. It's Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after an hour with us than you were when you started. Today, we have an illustrious guest. We always have great guests, but we have family with us today. It's Naomi Shelton, who leads the Charter School Collaborative, but she leads so much more in life. She's amazing. I'm happy to be here today, looking all bright and shiny in the morning, like you employed or something.
Listen, trying to drinking my coffee, trying to be awake and pretend.
You
got that cup because you were on mug. See.
She outdid me. Oh my God!
Why'd you start?
I mean, listen. I'm intentional.
He's gonna be distracted the whole show.
I was about to say
he's singing the song in the back of his mind.
I actually got this on one of my last trips to Minneapolis. So,
Lord, let me tell you right now, in my mind, I'm already over on Amazon purchasing that cup right now, just so we know.
You just go over to Paisley Park. That's where I got it. So
yeah, I might have to get down there, especially now that restrictions are being lifted. We're not having to wear masks everywhere. We're a little bit freer than we have been.
A friend of mine said that he was going to wear a mask so people didn't think he was a Republican.
Oh, wow. Well, that's all you got to do. I mean, I thought all you had to do was take off your hood. But all right.
I'm still nervous about the non-mask, because you don't know if folks got vaccinated or not, and they coughing all on you, breathing. Right. And they were like, hey, you vaccinated? No, actually, I'm not.
Is us breathing. I don't know why people don't understand this. It's your
right.
Little particles in it.
And they talked about a baseball player today. I forget what team he plays for. I think the Yankees. He had COVID before. He's fully vaccinated, and he just caught COVID again. I'm like, listen. I'm still kind of like.
I'm sure it's not as bad though. I'm sure it's not as bad.
That's what they said. That's what they said. Who knows?
Well, let's jump in, y'all.
Ooh, child.
Fridays are usually our time to talk about things within education that free us. Talk about things that help contribute to our freedom. That's why we call it Freedom Friday.
That's right.
Charter schools are one tool in a toolbox of many different tools of which we could use to create our own freedom. Just as obvious as we can make it. You start your own schools. You get to run the pedagogy. You get to say how the trains run and at what time. You get to hire the staff. You get to understand how you're going to approach the kids that you have and how you're going to do everything. That's an immense amount of power. So chartering your own course as Black people and people of color, chartering your own course in education is, I think, just the first step to liberation. So it's Charter School Week right now. I didn't celebrate this week. I didn't know what you're supposed to do for charter. Like all these ed reform holidays are starting to catch up with me because these people send me hashtags and blah blah. I'm like, am I supposed to put out 3 different candles, like a red one, a black one, a green one? Like, what am I supposed to? Is there like a 12-set principle?
Is there a charter crystal? Do we have charter crystal?
Like Umoja on day one of Charter School Week. Like I didn't know what you're supposed to do exactly, and nobody sent me the kit.
Right, we should have had boxes.
We should have had boxes or some sort of. So we have to talk to the people that organize these things. Candles,
Next year. So this year, of course, because I'm still trying to work through the mechanics of everything with our organization. I think we'll be very intentional next year about how are we talking about and really connecting the dots for the history of because this is the 30th anniversary of the very first charter law passing.
Wow, that's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
30 years.
Minneapolis or Wisconsin? Which one?
Don't do that. Don't do that, bro. Don't do that. Don't do that. It was Minnesota. Minnesota has given you charter schools, open enrollment, PSEO, early college. Well, I would say magnets, but some other folks would fight us on magnets. Prince, Bob Dylan, David Soul from Starsky and Hutch. Hot dish, which is a recipe that none of y'all know what's in it. No, we don't even really know what's in it, but we eat it all.
I just know y'all gave us spam.
Gave you spam.
But that in itself, y'all should be adopted by Canada.
And we gave you Target. Yes, we gave you Target, Pillsbury, Marshall Fields, 3M, Cargill, General Mills. Maybe you've heard of it. Cheerios.
All of that in Minnesota.
This is all Minnesota, girl. All
Is that why you
Minnesota.
moved
I'm gonna have my
This is all
intern
Minnesota.
research all of that, Naomi.
This is
Who
all
knows?
Minnesota, right?
I
We
just
gave you
know the
Nutri-Grain.
spam I can confirm. That canned whatever that stuff
Yeah.
is, I can
And
confirm that
Target.
came out of Minnesota.
That's right.
But we have to
You
like.
betcha. You betcha.
Oh God.
Ah,
Ugh.
yeah. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
no.
Ooh,
Oh
you
no.
betcha.
And y'all
Yeah.
have really, really tall Caucasian men there, and it is frightening.
Taller
They're
than
like
average, better looking than average. We are
They
above
like
average in every
giant.
way. So yes. So
Ooh.
anyways, yes, 30 years of charter schools, going way back. Everybody keeps lying about the story of why it was started here, like what started it. Really, honestly, if we were just being very clear, what started it was Minnesota was a hotbed of trying different types of schools anyways. Like we had a federal grant in the 1970s and 1980s to start really weird different schools. We were one of 2 or 3 places. And there was a whole section of Minneapolis where they just kind of like started all kinds of schools without walls, open schools, schools that didn't have regular schedules or bells or any of that type of stuff. And out of that spirit, charter schools came. Also, though, there was a negative reason to start them, which was parents were starting to go, even left-wing parents were starting to go the direction of vouchers. So parents were starting to demand like real freedom, like, hey, we should just have access to whatever we want. And there was a move to say, well, let's provide you with a public option that gives you choice and, you know, access to some different stuff. So you don't need vouchers. You don't need to go outside. Right. So that was so public, fully public, but choice oriented, whatnot. And because of that, in Minnesota and Minneapolis, what's different than a lot of places is that we have a lot of homegrown charter schools and we don't have a lot of big box charter schools. So we don't have like we have one KIP, but we don't have a KIP network or a KIP chain of schools. And we don't have all that other stuff like Uncommon and all that. We have mom and pop, Hmong schools, Black schools, Latino schools, community-based coming up. Like the Hmong population went to the school district and said, we're getting beat up in your schools. We're losing our language. We're losing our culture. Our kids are coming home and they're not able to talk to their grandparents anymore. We don't want that. And the district tried to work with them, set up a couple of things. They eventually started their own charter schools. Or charter schools were started for them or whatnot. Anyways, that as background, how does that apply to today? How does that apply to Charter School Week? And Naomi, specific to you and Sharif, even to you, how does that fit in with how you see charter schools as working for us, not working for everybody, but working for us?
Well, of course, I think the work of NCC is really and truly rooted in how are we ensuring that single site schools that are created by people of color are supported, that we have a healthy supply of that, how we ensure that we're strengthening and convening the leaders that have been creating these schools for the last, I think, I can back into some of the dates and say that they are early adopters within the charter movement. And how do we make sure that we sustain the health of those institutions? Overall, I think it's important that the story you just told in terms of people wanting their children to receive an education, but to still hold on to their culture. And NCC, schools started by people of color, Black, Brown, Indigenous, are focused on those very things. How do you maintain the cultural connection, but also infusing and making sure that the academic excellence and high quality education that people are seeking is embedded in that work? And having children have to come into spaces where they have to assimilate, come into spaces where they have to show up and normalize against white culture just doesn't serve them well. And what we want to do and what we want to see is communities be able to thrive and appreciate what it is that what they bring to the landscape of America. You know, the schools that we are working with that are part of our network, that are also working with the Freedom Coalition of Charter Schools. What we're really focused on is how do we do an education that's for us, by us. I know that you talked to Kaya last week, and how are we thinking about it in that way? It's no different than Jewish schools and how they think about making sure that they're holding on to their religious culture. We want to do the same.
That sounds racist as hell.
Is it?
That sounds racist as hell.
Is
What do you mean
it?
hold on to our culture? We're all Americans. Why are you trying to hold on to somebody?
We are, and America has been very good about eating up Black culture specifically, and then regurgitating it in a way that they want to pretend like, oh, it's Gen Z. No, a lot of the things that are happening right now have been adopted by what it is that we started. I mean, we can see it in television and movies. We saw it with Friends and Living Single. People love to like chew us up and spit us out and then act like, oh, this is all under the red, white, and blue. And we know that that's not the case.
Yeah, when they chew it up and spit it out, they spit it out for a profit, just so we know.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sharif?
Laugh and ridicule until we can make some money off of it, right? That's no, I think what she said is right, Naomi, and you should definitely talk about your organization, NCC, for folks who don't recognize the acronyms. But I think this whole idea, I can't help but to think, when we talk about like the Black Blueprint, what happened before, these 5,000 schools that were built, many of them by Black people, chopping down trees, literally building a school, bringing their oxen down to level the land, all that kind of stuff. And I can't help but to think that there's a line there, a thread that goes straight from there all the way to what people are trying to do, and particularly the one-offs. And when I think about how people want to raise their children in a safe environment, culturally, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually safe for Black children, you need opportunities. If you want to be able to have a language, you need those opportunities. You need the autonomy. You need the collective accountability, and you need to be able to respond to the community's aspirations. And I also think a lot about just suppose we had more community-based schools, which the charting option is a way to do that. And suppose the other institutions were also community-based, right? Like your rec center, and they're offering activities and programming that the community wants, right? The libraries, and they have, the materials that they want. Because in white neighborhoods, that's exactly what happens. You could go there and see the lack of diversity, lack of this, lack of programming. You go to the rec centers in Northeast Philadelphia, and they look very much different than the rec centers in Southwest Philadelphia, right? And so us having those things are absolutely important. And then you layer on top of that institutions, Black institutions that are community focused and based, that's part of the ecosystem that our children absolutely need and deserve. And we have to fight like hell to ensure that they happen. And then when they do happen, that they're protected.
I think that protected part is something that people don't take very seriously.
And protection means being assertive, not after they're, they coming for you. Like, no, that's not when you protect yourself. You protect yourself before somebody comes, not after they, crashing your door down. Like that's.
Can I test a theory with you two about these schools? It's not really a theory, but option A and option B, option A and option B. This isn't a bad take. Okay. This is a serious question I literally do have, right? On one hand, we want high quality schools that help our kids achieve their highest potential and their goals. And we have to have some measurements for how that happens or whatnot. So I become sometimes sounding like a little bit of a accountability hawk on the regular systems or whatnot. Okay, so that's option one of how we look at our schools that we want to start. At the same time, we start schools sometimes that aren't always going to be knocking it out of the park in year 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, because we're figuring some stuff out. And in those schools, sometimes I'm like, no, you've had 150 years of doing schools. You're not going to give this school 5 years to kind of like get its footing and its pedagogy right or whatnot. If the parents are happy and it has culturally relevant pedagogy and it is serving the students. So is that really even a binary, for one? Like, I'm making it a binary. Like should I say we should be starting our own schools and they should all be excellent and high quality within, a couple of years or whatnot, versus no, we're building a cottage industry of education that hasn't existed for a long time. And we need time to work it out and figure it out. So option 1 and option 2, tell me what you think out of those two. Where should I land on those two?
Option 3.
Option 3. See, y'all always want to do that. A third way. A third way. You know what a third way is? A third way is like translating French as I don't want to answer that damn question. But go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think
third way.
Part of the reason that we have people that are creating schools and having to like give and take and figure it out is because we are not thinking about this in a collaborative way, right? So the National Charter Collaborative is thinking about how are we elevating and amplifying what is happening, what is working, not only to the general public, but to the other leaders with the single site charter schools that exist in this country that have been started by people of color. They are operating in silos. And how do we make sure that the lessons that have been learned by, you have charter schools in some places that have been in existence for 20 plus years that were started by people of color, what they've learned over that time should be imparted to the folks that are coming into this space. Yes, we need to know all the newest and truest ways of doing work, but we also need to know how they were able to navigate and sustain themselves over time. So being focused on not only, yes, we have to have the culturally relevant pedagogy, right? But we also have to have the high quality education that's ensuring that students are prepared for what it is they want to see for their lives. The idea of you have to do one or the other is not true. We've seen too many examples of that not being the case. I think Purpose Prep in Nashville, you have Urban Prep in Chicago. There's a school that you always talk about in California, Chris. There are so many versions of schools that do both and do them well that we can easily, if not replicate that, of course you have to have the nuances that show up for different communities, but we have the ability to really do that, sharing amongst those groups, to be thoughtful about how to find the balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I agree. I mean, because it's not like we're talking about like, some new invention or, going on Mars. Hey, let's figure this out. Let's tinker with it. Let's try this. We don't know, like we're pulling from a vacuum. And I would say it's the exact opposite. Like we're not pulling from the vacuum. We actually have a well of resources, examples, outcomes, results that we can draw from. We have research that we can draw from. And so I do think, part of the challenge of starting a new school is so many of them, particularly if they're Black and brown led, and they're individual schools, is that the resources are limiting their opportunity. And also agree the collective, that I'm not a fan of his, but the drawing that Ben Franklin drew when he was trying to get the colonies to come together despite their differences was a snake chopped up, and he said unite or die. And wow. I can't help but to constantly, that image is what comes up when I think of a lot of the individual charters, right? Like as soon as I know in Philadelphia, when the state cut the budget, who got hit hardest? It was a single charter school that, I mean, they were devastated, right? Like, I mean, they're cutting.
You know what? Actually, like, on that point, Sharif, I just saw something come out of Philly, though, that the Black charter operators of Philly are saying that they're the first ones to get, like, if you want to apply the scrutiny about quality, like who's quality and who's not, there's a secret that we all know. The secret is it's this charter schools of color that are going to be the first on the chopping block when you bring that, and then you start looking into it. Well, why wasn't there a quality situation? Well, I don't know. You gave tens of millions of dollars to the white charter school chain. You gave a $300,000 grant over 5 years to the startup.
They just hosted a virtual rally on Tuesday. The African American Charter School Coalition in Philadelphia was able to be joined by several of the members of their Black caucus. And a lot of the charter schools were actually represented, had their students participating in the virtual rally. And they were very clear about the things that they want to see. They want to have a full, what is it? Like a triage of what it is that they are being measured against. So they want to have a moratorium on closures until they are the authorizers are able to demonstrate what they are measuring against. And thinking about that, they're thinking about funding. And there's another, of course, I should know it, but I don't. But they hosted that rally on Tuesday to draw attention to all of the ways that their schools have been showing up in the community, but they are being marginalized by the authorizer and the state.
Mm-hmm. And I can't help but to, call out that, so it's this united body. It's only a year old. It's only a year old. right? It should be, I think in Pennsylvania, how long? Like, so it should be 20 years old, organization like that. And that's also what I mean. It's like, we can't wait until the house is on fire to unite. Like, part of sustainability is making sure, that these things are happening, and I'm hoping that they are connected with you and your organization, Naomi, because in the past, I've brought that up, and there was conversation with like, well, suppose it's not black led, suppose it's black led, but not black founded, and suppose, like all of these things,
or with the whiteboard, or
and it was all of that, which, well, that's why we can't come together. I'm like, you're black. Come together.
Okay, this is what I want to tell y'all. Philadelphia and DC in the house today. Philadelphia, DC, and Minnesota on this podcast. If you want some real, what you do is you go to Detroit. And Detroit has Bernita Bradley, who answered the question straight up. She said, yes, they want us to give them time to figure it out, but they don't want to give us time when we are talking about taking education back. So we are trying to take education back. It's going to have some bumps and bruises along the way, but we should be the ones doing it. And we shouldn't have people trying to pull up the carpet from under our feet in the middle of trying to get it done, especially when we know that they're more mediocre than they think they are. Even the ones who would judge us on this themselves are hella mediocre, right?
Well,
they may, if mediocrity was like a prize, they'd be like thanking God with Jay-Z up on the stage. I want to thank you, Lord, for this prize, the mediocrity prize. I appreciate it.
How did Jay-Z get brought up?
I have no idea, but listen.
Mediocre as hell, but keep going.
And listen, I will say that I am particularly biased because my 16 years of chart experience, or 11 years of chart experience, and 16 years of principalship was only in turnaround schools. And I knew going in, I didn't have a couple of years, and a couple of years to reach, a larger destination. But I went to my first school as a principal in January.
Wow.
In January.
Wow.
And I went in saying like, what, by June, it's going to feel hella different in this building. Like that was the responsibility I had. I didn't say I was going to reach any promised land by June, but it was going to be remarkably different. And it was, right? And so I think that, for me, I've only had that turnaround. Like, no, this needs to look different. Even when you go in and turnaround, you said, when I talk to some of the students, because the students stay, right? Turnarounds, same kids, different adults, usually different expectations and very different results is what the kind of framework is. And speaking to the students who had returned, they were like, they left in June for the summer break. When they came back in August, they said they were shocked because they had been lied so many times about, oh, this is going to change. Oh, this is going to change. Oh, this is going to be different. And they said they actually came back and they're like, I've been in school for, 8-9 years, and I've heard adults lie about the changes that were going to happen. This is the first time I actually saw that, hey, maybe it is changing. Right. And so I think, and this is why I think growth measurements are also important, where it's not just like absolutes, but like, yes, you should be able to show progress.
Growth, but not necessarily like aggregate numbers, but growth. Like the kids should be going the right direction.
Absolutely. And you made a very important point of there's some folks that get, they have carte blanche to fail for 100 years,
some people fail and then get promotions afterwards. I call them disciplinary promotions, and ed reform is good for this. Yep, you get a disciplinary promotion. Oh, you sucked here. You sucked in Cleveland. Yeah, let's bring you to Oakland because you sucked in Cleveland. Okay. Well, you sucked in Oakland now too. Oh yeah, but there's a job in Baton Rouge. Let's pull you down here. That's ed reform 101, but that's not black ed reform 101. Let's just be real clear. I just want to intersperse in this conversation because if you want to go to Nashville, Visha Hawkins in the comments brought this up. Purpose Prep, run by Lagra Newman, who's
Newman.
Yes, and her code, the thing that she says is, I don't know what's going on in your life outside of here, but you're gonna learn today. That is her phrase, and they live by that, and that is why her school is outperforming in one of the poorest, most incarcerated zip codes in the United States. That is why she is seeing the brilliance and the brightness of young Black children who other people would discount and not see as having elastic brains for all the reasons that we talk about in education, that kids can't learn. Oh my God, they have broken families, they can't eat, they this, that, and the other. We awfulize Black children to death. And then here comes Allegra Newman with a school and a school idea that doesn't awfulize our children to death. And lo and behold, they succeed. Lo and behold, it's like
we can learn from that, right?
We can learn from it.
We can learn from that. And please don't, folks in the audience, please don't, if she says, heard that tagline, please don't take that like, oh, see, they don't care about what else is going on. That's not what that means. That means that in spite of what's going on, you still have the capacity to learn. And she's also taking care of those needs, right?
Correct.
Like it's not like, oh, I don't care. It's like within the school. Exactly. So, but people love to take that. See, that
people have done that with no excuses, right? So the way we talk about big box charters, these are no excuses schools, and people have weaponized that language. We're gonna get into the weaponization of all of the things that people want to be able to like turn on its neck, the way that narcissists do, to make you sound like you're crazy when you're actually doing something that is of substance.
Yeah, they used to, and Black folks will do it too. They would come to me, you're at a no excuses school. I'm like, you know what?
No,
I'm damn proud of it, because
actually the no excuses was for the adults.
Exactly. And you know what?
You cannot come to this school building and make excuses for why these children cannot learn.
Look at y'all getting riled up.
No, I would have these arguments about so-called woke people. And I'm like, listen, Negro, I didn't first hear about no excuses from this charter operator. I actually heard it from my great grandma. And she had a whole poem about, excuses build monuments to nothingness.
Nothing. Right?
She's 100-some years old, and she was like, don't make excuses. And so now we're saying, oh, you can't say that. So what is it? Like, make excuses school? Like, is this make excuses?
You know what my grandfather used to say? My grandfather used to say, you can't eat excuses.
Exactly. And I
remember thinking, I hated that as a saying.
As a kid, because
what does that mean?
My martial arts teacher used to say, you can have results or excuses, not both.
That's right.
That's what he used to tell us. You can have one or the other. Which one do you want? Right. I got my black belt because I was like, I want the results. Right. So
yeah.
Wow. You can have results or excuses, but you can't have both. Damn. What are other charter schools that you would point to? Like I just pointed to Lagra in Nashville. What are some others that you would point to where you think this is what we should be talking about? Like we should be lifting up examples for our public. We shouldn't talk about charter schools generically. We should talk about them specifically. Do you have any that you would point to? I could think about like Eagle Academy. I could think about the work that Eric Mahmoud has done in the Twin Cities. I can think about a couple of schools in Oakland where they've taken really radical ways of like thinking about their school day.
The International Leadership Charter High School in New York, Latina founded school, single site school. They're doing amazing work and have been for years. I believe Dr. Ruiz Lopez runs that school. I think, did you mention it or not? I mentioned it earlier when I brought up Purpose Prep, but Urban Prep in Chicago. There are tons of like pockets of these schools, right? That we hear about them, but like they fly right under the radar. We have a list of more than 450 schools, single site schools throughout the country. Of course, there are some that I'm more familiar with. I'm familiarizing myself. If you ever want to know how long I've been in my job, it's one more day than Joe Biden.
And how many people have you gotten vaccinated?
How many people have I personally gotten vaccinated?
Yes.
What's that have to do? What are we talking about? You talking about for school?
Well, you want to compare your record to Joe Biden.
Listen, so 3, myself, my mother, and my stepfather.
Okay, that's proportionate.
Right? I thought you were about to say me, myself, and I. All right. I'm like, all right, De La Soul. I
can't even really count my parents. My god sister was able to do that, and that is what about being a community, right?
That's right. She would have been in the comments like, you ain't take them, I did that.
Sherry, I do have a list of the charter schools in Georgia. There's one that was founded by a gentleman that attended Morehouse. You have Ivy Prep that was founded by a black woman that's there in Georgia, in Atlanta, right outside of Atlanta. So there are tons of opportunities. There are tons of places where we can point to the high quality schools that have been started by people of color. But one of the things that I'm focused on in partnership with a lot of the other charter support organizations is making sure those stories are told. But Chris, I just really want to quickly point out, so Kariga Rausch, who is now the president and CEO of the NACSA, National Charter Schools Authorizers. I can't ever
it's
remember.
National Authorizers.
See?
Charter schools.
Charter
Y'all,
Schools
this is why there needs to be more black people in ed world, because we know how to name some stuff.
Okay, I got it.
What is it?
National Association of Charter School Authorizers.
I was going to say that. I'm grateful to be on their advisory board. So yes.
Right.
Okay, so let's just stop for a second. Okay, so we have the National Alliance of Public Charter Schools, which I don't like putting public before charter school because it's like a double negative.
Right.
Charter schools are public, so when you say public charter school, you're saying public school.
Okay.
But anyways, we have the National Alliance of Public Schools, and then we have the National Alliance or the National Charter School Collaborative, which is charter schools of color, leaders charter schools of color.
Yeah.
We have the National Authorizers. What is NACSA again?
National Association of Charter School Authorizers. Those are different things, though.
Yeah, that's national. So these are three different things.
Authorizing bodies.
Keep going. So we have one that's like the Coalition of Independent Public Charter Schools.
But that's different. NACSA is
that's too many letters. It's like alphabet soup around this joint. Y'all need to stop this. Y'all need to stop this nonsense, right?
I want to point out, if we were to run down all the things that are related to traditional public schools, we would be a bunch of acronyms too. That's true. And NACSA kicked off a campaign earlier this year. It is the With Communities campaign. So they are thinking about centering communities at the center. That is the campaign. And it is, how do we think about authorizing with communities at the center of that work?
Yeah.
Thinking about that, Kariga and I just released an op-ed with Ed Post earlier this week, and talking about how are we now looking at communities of color who have been innovative in so many ways throughout the history of this, not just country, but this world. How are we looking at how they are going to be the center of, and at the crux of how schools evolve and what we think about post-COVID? This campaign is really focused on elevating all of the ways that community engagement and community-centered work can impact the charter sector. So the communities come with diverse and creative excellence. They have neighborhood priorities. They are in pursuit of justice. The community co-design of schools and the impact of that, what those new partnerships can look like. So thinking about all of the different ways that when you fold in organizations and people at the grassroots and grass tops level, and how they can have impact on what happens with schools, that we can really transform what's happening in the charter sector.
Yeah, I didn't see this. I'm glad that y'all, put something out like this. I was part of some of the conversations, and it was really great to see people like just, and I think it's late, and they would also recognize that it was, that it's late. And if ed reform had started from this vantage point, how much different the experiences would be for children across the country, right? And I just think these are the things that have to, be front and foremost. And when you started a charter, you are more nimble, right? And you should use that nimbleness to ensure that students, their achievement, I'm talking about, the wealth of achievement that goes across, standardized tests and reading scores, but how are they achieving? Back to that safety, is it evident that they are safe and prosperous across the dashboard, that, and then this collective accountability, right? Literally centering what are the aspirations of the community, not just coming in hey, here's our rules and this is what we're doing. No, actually come in and listen. Here's what we want, and this is what we want for our children, and this is how we're going to hold you accountable, and embracing it.
This is why, so first of all, shout out to my amazing, wonderful, awesome team of talented people, small team that gets mighty things done, and that raises the voices of people that needs to be heard in a way that is crisp and sharp and makes it happen. Brightbeam, you are amazing. Thank you, my people. And Ed Post specifically to that. This is the movement, though, that we need. What I just heard and what you all said, I'm sitting here thinking it should have never been about education reform. Reforming a movement, reforming a system that's not reformable, and a system that probably wasn't good and built for us in the first place was always the wrong objective.
Right.
You didn't want to reform slavery, right? You wanted to get rid of slavery and start something that looked like freedom. Right. And because we had been robbed as people in this country, as non-white people in the United States, we had been robbed of education for years and years and years, and continued to be robbed even as we tried to reform every 10 years, tried to reform the system that continued robbing us. We're owed a debt, as Gloria Lanson Billings would tell us, we are owed an educational debt. And because that, we should have never had a reform movement. We should have had an education justice movement. We should have always been asking what would be just in this situation. If you rape and rob people for hundreds of years, and then you say, okay, just today we're going to stop doing that, and we're going to keep you in a system that is only half good or even partially good for the future. That's not justice. That's actually not justice. That's just reforming the system a little bit, making some tweaks and a little bit of changes. We want justice. And what would justice look like? Justice would be like Sharif running schools and preparing educators to truly liberate our children, their minds and their consciousness. It would be Naomi Shelton getting out there, blocking and tackling and fighting for people who want to do that exact same thing in our own communities, like people of color and Black folks who actually literally want to say, no, I'm not here to reform your raggedy ass system, because your raggedy ass system is the problem. What I actually am here to do. And do we use that anymore? Is that like part of our grant proposals? Like we put in grant proposals, what are you trying to do in the world? Well, what I want to do is fix your raggedy ass system. Is that what we say? Do we put that in our grant reports now?
Extra points if they do. Points if they do.
Yeah. We don't. You don't listen. Listen. If you're listening to this and you watch this right now, we are giving you a 101. This is how you write a grant report. You put this at the top. There's a part where they might ask you, what is it that you want to do? How will the world be different? Well, the world will be different is your raggedy ass system won't be like miseducating our children in mass anymore.
So I just want to really quickly back up, because someone said something in the comments, and I want us to be clear about this, and to tie this to what you just said, not just the raggedy ass system reform, upending that. But one, there was a comment earlier about colorblindness, right? I just want us to all be clear.
Oh my gosh. I didn't.
There is no way. There is absolutely no way. And everybody knows I used to work for UNCF. I love UNCF. My alma mater is a UNCF institution. So I just want to be clear. I would say maybe at this point, almost 10 years ago, was at a gathering of alums from various scholarship programs that they have for UNCF. And this young lady said, oh, well, I don't want people to see race when they see me. I want them to see me for who I am. And I let her finish, let her finish the statement. And I turned and it was one of those moments where I'm like, I didn't know, I came outside of my body. I said, I want you to be clear. The people will always see your race. You want them to see your race. So when they see the young woman in the grocery store, when they are on the road driving, when they are walking down the street and they see another person of color, they actually see them. This world cannot be, the world that we live in is not colorblind, because at the end of the day, I don't take this melanin off. It doesn't come off. So the idea of us removing people's color is that's irrational. You're always going to see someone's color. You're going to see the color of their eyes, their hair. You're going to see the size of their lips, their nostrils. You're going to see all of those things. How is it that you can ensure that by someone seeing you for who you are, frees people from having this very binary idea of what being Black, what being Latina, what being any of the things that show up on the scale of melanin, that they are going to see those people as who they are and not assume anything about them because of that. So not a colorblindness. I need everybody to see the full rainbow, right?
Here's my trick on colorblindness. I'm just going to quickly say, let's not buy into because we're buying into big lies in our politics. So let's not buy into smaller lies in our sociology. No one's colorblind. It's just bullshit. And even the people who say it are the first to clutch their purses in elevators, or the first to like hit the lock on their cars. And you ain't colorblind when you walking down the street and it's about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night or whatnot. You are not colorblind when you out jogging.
I know it was Bill. I recognize that it was, but I have to say it, right? We have to say it.
No. Right? I'm with you.
Right?
I'm just putting a fine point on it. Like, let's call people out for what they say that colorblind nonsense. It ain't
right
true.
Now. There are women that are organizing to ensure that we do not move forward in having a liberatory education for children. There are people that are working actively. They are organized.
Call it out.
Every single day. We are
clear.
Literally reliving histories. Several months ago, I said, at some point, we have to get tired of having to relearn the same lesson because y'all forgot to learn it 50 years ago.
That's right.
The 50 years before that.
We
are literally living in the new version of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, and having women show up and show out to say, I don't want to see, what is it? I don't even know. I don't even know what that is. Right. Yeah. As a Black woman, I have not been trained academically to even know what that is. I know what it is because I have done research, but I'm not trained on that. What I do know is that when I was in school, because I had Black teachers, they showed up for us in a way where we were affirmed, we were loved, and we, of course, I went to Montessori, traditional, and then Catholic high school. And so I've had a full spectrum of like understanding this from different perspectives. Even in the Catholic school I attended, because it was such a high population of Black and Filipino students, they showed up for us, right? They showed up and created space and opportunity for us to be in that space, not for us to show up in the ways that they wanted us to, how Catholicism thinks we should. They created the space for us, right? One of the ways that we're the reverse indoctrination is, let's not talk about anything unless it has to do with what white people want it to be.
Okay, let me stop you there. I'm just going to ask you a question straight up, because you're hitting on something that is happening right now. As a movement, it is happening right now. White women are showing up to school board meetings or running for school board on anti-racism tickets. Meaning, because y'all understand double negatives. When I say anti-racism, what does that mean?
Racist. It's racist.
That racism. Okay, so let's just be clear what we're saying now. We got white women showing up to school board meetings and to school board races on a pro-racist ticket, because they want to defend what their little white children are learning and seeing. And by defend, I mean they don't want them encountering stories that they don't want them encountering, meaning like, for instance, Thomas Jefferson's a pedophile, right? They don't want like the truth to be told or whatnot. But I've seen the clips of that, like the Education Karen movement is off to a full start. It's a full start. Yeah, crying. Oh my God, just because I don't want my kids learning about racism doesn't make me a racist.
It means a racist.
Yeah, and it's kind of like someone should have been right there saying, like, that literally is what it means. Just so you know, like literally, that is what that means. But where are the clips, Naomi, of Black moms showing up, Black and Latino moms, Latina moms showing up to those same meetings with a microphone? Where are our viral videos saying,
I just want to be
hell no?
So in Southlake, Texas, right now, several, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, there was like something happened on social media where students were heard, saying, singing the N-word and, just being ridiculous, right? So the school district basically allowed students to come together, have conversations about this. And the students decided they wanted to have really thoughtful DEI work happen within their schools, right? The students asked for this. So the school district and the school board was like, all right, well, we'll work with the schools to do this, blah, blah, blah. This is now like turned into a thing of parents fighting this. Now the students want it. But parents are fighting it. And who leading the charge are parents of color. So like brown parents, Latina parents that are like, no, let's arrest the school board members because they violated the Open Meetings Act. They are intimidating members of the school board to keep them from being able to do what the students want to do, which is like learn
And the violation was like a text or something, right? Like they had texted about the meeting, not like had secret meetings, but had conversations. Like
it was literally like, hey, are we all going to get on we all have to do X, Y, and Z. It wasn't a thing of like, let's have a deliberative conversation. I bring this up because the woman who is the president of that school board was my development director at UNCF. I guess, what would she refer to herself? She's a white Cuban American, right? Living in South Lake, Texas, and having a good, was leading a regular life. And now they are being accosted by parents who don't want to do not what the school district or school board suggested. It's what the students want. The students not dumb. What these parents want to make sure, just like the Daughters of the Confederacy, what they want to make sure of is that we continue to indoctrinate children. We want them to see the world from this very specific lens. And if it isn't that, then we will lose power. This is literally what people are grasping for breath at the end of life.
Yeah, if it's not white exceptionalism, they don't want it for their children, right? And back to that colorblindness, it's so amazing that you can be colorblind, but yet you bat 1,000 in racist policies, racist curriculum, right? How are you color? How do you keep hitting the mark and you're blindfolded and don't see any of it, but you are constantly who gets gunned down? Who got the worst housing, policies? Who got the worst healthcare support? Who got the worst schools? Like, you're batting 1,000. That's pretty good to be blind, So are you really?
Well, that just means you're a Jedi.
Yeah.
That just
you're manipulative, like narcissist. United Nations
Sith are the worst kind. Right? That's what
it's ridiculous that people are going through this amount of effort to protect, what are their lies. This is all rooted in lies.
This is the point I wanted to eventually drive through. When you think about why we care about charter schools, why we care about building power is really what we care about. We don't necessarily care specifically that the tool is right. Charter schools are a tool. Policy is a tool. School boards are a tool. Advocacy is a tool. A tool for what? Well, the tool is we need to all together, people in the comments and us together collectively, have to be answering the question, to what end are we doing all this shit that we do every day? To what end? And the end really is power. There's no other end. There is no other end. Because when you can but power gets you liberation. Right. America doesn't recognize anything like it recognizes power. Right. So the ability for me to be uncomfortable today and have a legislator writing a bill on my behalf tomorrow because my child was uncomfortable in a classroom, that's power. That's white power. So we're doing a lot of activities. We're doing a lot of things. But this is the only reason I'm driving to this point that I'm saying right now is I wrote a piece about our own education movement. Us having our own education movement should be for power, and it should be specifically for Black power and for people of color power. And that power should come with us marshaling our resources, our knowledge bases, our activities, aligning more of what we do with each other, and stop seeing ourselves as part of citizens of somebody else's country and start seeing ourselves as citizens of our own country. If our friends and allies within this thing that we're calling the ed reform movement, or whatever you want to call it, they are not friends and allies if they don't see the need for us to achieve power for us, by us, because really what they are asking us to do is sharecrop in a semi-racist movement that we don't need to be part of if we're not willing to own ourselves. We need to own the land. We need to own the means of production. We need to own the organizations. We need to own the policies and the laws. And until we do that, we only have two kinds of allies: part-time lovers or John Browns. The John Browns of the world are going to be willing to go all out for us because they know the goal is for us to own us. For us to own us and own what we do. The part-time lovers, the Stevie Wonder part-time lover folks that want to be our allies today, putting secret stuff in my DMs. Oh, Chris, I'm so glad you said that such and such about those other racist white people who said that shit in ed reform, blah, blah. I'm so tired of it, whatnot. If you putting it in my DMs and you not putting it out in the world, you're a part-time lover, and I do not need you. Do not need you. I when they're about to string me up on the tree and you sending me private messages about, I can't believe they're using that kind of rope. I cannot believe that they putting you up on a birch tree instead of a good tree. Right? Stop it. I don't want to be part of the phony education movement. I want to be part of the real education movement. The real education movement is one that is based in justice, and justice for me ends in my power, ends in me being empowered.
What did Ray say yesterday? What did he say? Tell me. The idea of separate but equal. If we had actually been able to achieve that, if we had actually been able to have Tulsa, if we had actually been able to have neighborhoods that were like committed to the people and the ways that we want to show up for one another, if we had actually allowed the Black Panther Party to thrive, if we had actually allowed for all of those things, we know that we would be in a completely different place, right? We know that the ways that the way that America shows up right now is not what we would have. And people are afraid of that because they recognize their own mediocrity, period. Right? You don't want us to thrive. One, I don't want, I'll make sure that I drop the link so that you all can share it. A friend of mine walked through like the history of post-slavery and how it was a concerted effort to make sure that white people who were not of affluence were encouraged to think about themselves in a way that they were better than they were better than the freed slaves, right? It was an intentional effort to undermine any way for us from, the folks who were at the bottom of the rung, for us to be collaborative and to be, connected in a way where we had shared power. We saw the same thing happen with the Black Panther Party when we were like, you know what? Let's make sure that everybody that's having issues with the man is all on the same page singing from the same sheet music. Now we got to tear up the sheet music. We got to throw this all, we're going to make sure we throw it all away. When Black people were take care of themselves, and I've had to say this to Black friends of mine who are, brothers and sisters from the diaspora, thinking about it in a way of Black people don't lack the determination. We have literally had the foot of this country on our neck. Literally, right? Every single time we have had the ability to achieve, and this is subversive. It's not a thing of like openly happening. I just listened to a story on NPR about, and I know this already because of where I worked, but HBCUs being underfunded, and it's been intentional. Public HBCUs in states that have not received the appropriate allocation of funding for
Pennsylvania.
Right? Pennsylvania, Maryland, Tennessee, you see it all the time where they are trying to like slowly but surely keep people from the resources that they need because they know that fully empowered, we will run circles around this world, run circles around it. And why is that so frightening? Why is your mediocrity? Why are you protecting that? Right?
We should do a show where we name these things all in terms of Public Enemy album covers. Or songs. This one, Fear of a Black Planet, is real, right? Fear of a Black Planet is real as hell. So the idea that we would ever be excellent on our own is it scares both liberals and conservatives alike. Liberals are like, well, no, like right now, honestly, this is germane to this conversation. It's not an aside. We have the most frustrating case here in Minnesota because they are literally trying to outlaw Black schools. They're literally trying to pass, white liberals and progressives are literally trying to pass a settlement with the state that would penalize Black schools and brown schools for not attracting white students. Literally would take money from you. You would have 3 years.
In Connecticut, right?
And this is my point. This is white liberals who are pushing this case because they can't imagine that us being on our own would at all ever be excellent. They literally are saying this in court. They're literally saying that when we are crowded together, that is literally the problem. The problem is too many Black people being clumped together in a place. Do you know how racist that is and how insulting? And that's coming from the white left. That is not coming from the white right. They're literally saying you would have 3 years as a Black school or one of these charter schools that like the Hmong Academy. The Hmong Academy would have to, in 3 years, attract white students or lose money. Right. From the state.
And when I talk about Connecticut, we're talking about, the work of schools being reserved. They stay empty, if they don't have enough white children. You can't bring more Black children in the magnet schools. Right. And so it has to remain empty until a white child goes there. And there's so many Black and brown kids that white families ain't putting their kids in there. Right. Like there's studies that show the darker the school body is, the more reluctant white folks are to put them in there. And so, but I also think where do they learn this from? If you can take a doll study and say, oh, you know what? Black children are oppressed if they don't, they have a bad way to go. They're oppressed if they don't sit next to white children.
That's right.
Right? Like, so instead of, we're not going to fund you fairly. We're going to destroy that which you have because you are so, you're so broken. And you have to, so we went from a doll to now sitting you next to that child. If you get to say, you might just be in the building in the basement, right? Like that's what tends to happen. You don't actually even sit next to the children. You end up somewhere, far removed, and so I just like, we have to, keep reminding ourselves that, like when they talk about stuff, like we got to listen. When they show you who they are, believe them. When Edgar Hoover, their hero, when he says, you know what, the greatest threat to white America is Black unity, right? The greatest threat to white hegemony is Black unity. This is what they're saying, right? This is what they're saying, right? And so we should believe that.
And our unity is not anti-whiteness, right?
Exactly.
Our unity is not rooted in, well, we don't want to be with you. Let us incubate ourselves. Let us be what you get to be when you're living out in Iowa and there are no Black people with you. Allow us to have what we need, right? I used to say this all the time. As a fourth generation HBCU graduate, I truly believe that the time I spent on that
them Black people.
No. You
better not put that out there. You're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Because I wanted to be clear that people will look at me and be like, oh, well, as a first gen college graduate. And I'm like, no, my great grandmother was born in 1899 and went to straight college in New Orleans, which is now Dillard University. It's not about like me being like the elitism. It's really about, we've been like beating the drum for education for decades.
I mean, but it goes back to power, right? Because it's like, we don't want you to be able to come to the table as equals, right? And if you come to the table, we'll speak for you, we'll define you, we'll craft it. And I like that idea of like that you mentioned, Stuart, is about sharecropping. This is sharecropping, but they don't see it that way. Like, why are you trying to speak for me and define how I want to do this, how I want to build? I love the elementary school I went to. They weren't talking about reform. They said it was about educational justice. They're like, this is an alternative education for Black children. It's alternative. We like, screw that. We are building something that was built from the beginning for Black children, with Black children's success in mind.
Yeah.
That's the point that I think we can't drive home enough, though. You got to keep driving that home. Let me just ask you a very simple question. Do you think that the way that education was organized was wrong for us from day one? And if the answer to that is yes, why would you try and reform that? Like, why would you try and reform that? You know that America has handed you several systems and you've had problems with all of them. Like they said, like they came to you at some point and said, here's a portfolio of systems that you're going to be in because we brought you here and you're just going to be in these systems. What kind of fool do you need to be to want to reform those systems when you know that those systems, the courts, the policing, the education, the way higher ed is done, the way that research is done, all of those systems, if you are an intelligent Black person in 2021, it was a bad deal. Why would you be trying to reform something instead of doing what we know to do, which is start from scratch and like keep your kids in mind from day one? You're talking about the Black mind. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about the Black mind. So this is the damn fool. Okay, let me see. I'm in charge of the Black mind. What should I do? Let's give it to white people. Right?
I mean, the reason we had public education is because Black people after slavery were like, no, we got to learn how to read. Right. We are going to teach ourselves because we cannot wait for anyone else. And it was like, hold on. They doing it. So we got to do something on our own. Like we have to create a system about like now. The reason what bothers me so much about all of this, because I eat, sleep, breathe, and thinking about this all day. I think about the littles and all the way through college. How are we reminding people that all of this is created based on things that we believe, that we knew to be true for ourselves, and that it's being weaponized against us? It's literally being weaponized against us. The people that have bought into this idea of like, yes, we do need teachers. The work that Sharif is doing to make sure that we have more Black teachers means that we'll have more Black leaders, means that we can shift what is happening. People don't want to see those shifts. We're not interrogating people. Laymen are not interrogating why people don't want those shifts. And that's why this is so frustrating, is that people are not looking at all of the dots that are connected. We know that the ways that teachers are prepared is not for the ways that children need to learn now. How are we not backing into, let's make sure that teacher preparation programs look differently? How are we not thinking about, well, if we can create our own schools, let's do that? No, people are fighting for the systems that have been undermining us this whole time. It does it makes no sense. It's lunacy.
And what is it that, doing the same thing over and over again, whatever is the definition of what or something like that? Yeah, definition of sanity. All right. Well, listen, at the end of this, because we done broke it down. I think we done tore it down and broke it down and built it back up again. And we done fight the power. We done this is what I mean. And wait, no, I can't go all the way there on this show, on this program. I can't give you all the Public Enemy lyrics on this show. But I will say this much: at the end of the show, we should tell people, this work is very tiring, but what's the thing that gives you the most hope about doing it? What's the thing that you've seen in the last year, 2 years, however long, that really keeps you in it and makes you most animated that God's got us? Like we are on the right side of God, and we should not tire all the way out. We should not so what's the thing that gives you hope? I'll give each of you kind of like your time to say, what's the thing that keeps you in the work and gives you hope that we're going to win? Maybe start with you, Sharif, since we have an esteemed guest. We'll start with you, Sharif.
Sure. I mean, for me, my hope, inspiration, it draws from the youth. And when you look at what youth, how they're thinking, how they're connecting the dots, how they stay inspired, how they are engaging, right? Like their voice, they're continuously pushing and challenging despite of, the barriers, right? So the resistance, it goes back to, what I said before, when that revolutionary was, they thought they had cornered them, and they did, and they asked him where's your army now? And he said, on the laps of their mothers, right? And for me, that's exactly where our army is. They are in the laps of mothers. They are in classrooms. They are on their way to college. They are in the streets, shutting things down. They are raising their voices. For me, that's the hope. The hope is with the youth, and I see it all around us. And we just have to make sure that we're continuing to support them because they're the ones that's going to bring the change.
Naomi?
I echo everything that Sharif just said, but I what gives me hope is hearing and seeing the leaders who have created their own opportunities to build schools and educate students. Of course, the babies keep me going every day. That is one of the things that I hate about this entire pandemic, that we are not able to show up in those ways where we are focused on seeing children every day. I think about Dr. Charlene Reed, I think she's both in New York and in Jersey. But the Excellence community schools, I think about the leaders that are doing this work and that are building and trying and chipping away at this, eating the elephant one bite at a time. But I also think about those of us who are in this work that are all pushing for the needle to move. And, we're spinning our wheels in some places and spaces and thinking about how do we strengthen one another. And I also think of how do the school leaders strengthen one another, and making sure that we're thinking about this as a collaborative, the National Charter Collaborative. How are we doing this collaboratively? Because the other folks are organized. They are already being collaborative. They are collaborative in telling lies and selling the, snake oil to one another. And how are we dismantling that? So that's what keeps me going every day.
That's right. Don't let them outflank us. Let's go. Unite or die.
That's right.
That's going to be my new t-shirt, Unite or Die. What gives me hope is the work that you two do and the work that we could probably fill up this room, the work that Ron Rice does, the work that Dr. Steve Perry does, the work that that the Powerful Parent Movement does and the Freedom Charter School Collaborative does, the work that Kim Smith has done, the work that Kaya Henderson does with Reconstruction.us, the work that Lagra Newman does in Nashville and Eric Mahmoud does in the Twin Cities, and Akili Omade does in Oakland, the work that Tim King, who I have up here, who happens to be a member of the board of Brightbeam. Congratulations to us for being able to have such great people with us. But, the work that Urban Prep does in Chicago in sending great percentages and numbers of people into higher ed from some of the worst blighted neighborhoods of Chicago. The work that collectively that all these people that I would name does, and you know, I can name other people, are Black academics who are telling the real story, that are Black folks that are building better teachers and building better pedagogies and writing better books and showing us instead of telling us. Like, because you know, in good writing is actually showing, not telling. So if you write a book and it's all telling, your book editor will send that back to you. The best Black folks in education are the ones who are showing us. When I see a reconstruction.us where they have said, no, we're going to take out of school learning time into our own hands. We're going to take our children into our hands. We're not going to talk about it. We're going to walk about it. When I see people like Kenya Bradshaw and even our Black folks in philanthropy, within philanthropies, who are trying to funnel resources to us in an underground railroad to get us to help build the tracks so that we could put our kids on track for freedom and not put them on track with another version of oppression, just like, you know, slavery light. Or to create a stronger crop of Negropeans, but to create free Black people. Our folks in philanthropy, hats off to you, the ones who are really trying to do that job. When I look at people like Ray Ankrum, who is running real schools with real children, with real people in them, and Dr. Charles Cole, who is running a program that takes real students and engages them in the data that governs their own lives. Like saying, no, you are researchers at your age. You are like intelligent Black people. Put that all together, and how could you not have hope? How could you not have hope when you look in our comments and you see people like Visha Hawkins and Bernita Bradley and Elaine Wells and Sherry Lucas Hall and Mama Toya, who I don't know if she's in here today, and Michelle Johnson and others. How can you not have hope? When you see all the brilliant Black people, we are not lacking anything. That's what gives me hope. We're not lacking anything. We got organizations with hundreds of millions of dollars in resources. We have infrastructure, staff, and budgets. If we were a people on our own, our GDP alone would make us one of the top nations of the world. So Black people need to stop acting broken down and poor and like we don't have anything and we don't know anything and we don't own anything, because that's all a lie. That's what gives me hope. Gives me hope is that, like, if God came down and said, I'm going to create a group of people to defend the Black mind and the Black child, and you are it, I believe in us. I believe in us. I believe we're the ones and we're there. I just don't believe we're connected in the way we need to be connected. That's the only problem. I think the devil loves misalignment. And we need to go to a racial chiropractor because we are misaligned, right? That's our only problem right now.
Do you go to the chiropractor?
No, I ain't messing with nobody's chiropractor. I ain't trying nobody break my bones, like pop, snap, you know, all that
type of nonsense. I need one, and I was like, I ain't doing it. I'll just stretch on my own.
Yeah, just stretch. I'll just stretch.
Listen, hope
Bill,
is the revolutionary.
Y'all aren't able to see Bill's comments because he's watching on YouTube. But yes, to Black Power. I think one of the reasons that this is all confusing for people that have had themselves centered is because they think that this is the converse to that. We are saying we have our own collective power, and it is not to undermine or say that y'all can't have what you have. But I don't want to be involved in mediocrity that is of fear, right? That is steeped in fear. I want to be in a place and space where people know that they are liberated, they are free, they have power, and they can be they have self-determination. Right. There's
self-determination. Ooh, that's the word I didn't say. Thank you.
Right. That's self-determination.
Kujichagulia, bro. All the time. It always comes back to that. Right. Kujichagulia. And then you got some Nias sprinkled in there, a sense of purpose. Yo, bro. It's on and popping.
And it's not an anti anything. It is, well, we all need to be anti-racist. We all need to be focused on how do I have the self-determination to do what I need to do to show up fully. Whole, happy, and healthy. What do I need to do that? And by saying that we have to center whiteness to do that, that ain't gonna work. It's just not.
And it has not worked.
It has not worked. It hasn't worked. And if you love your child, if you look at your child every morning, you love your child, the thing that you want for them more than anything is for them to be freer than you've ever been. But you want them to own a room when they walk into it. You want them to never encounter a situation where they're considered lesser than. You don't want them ever sitting at any table where they're treated like the help. And if you truly love your children, you have to be honest and say, we're not on track for that right now. What we're on track for is another generation of subservient people. We can't have that. Well, I appreciate y'all for this Freedom Friday. Is that our final word? Because I always know there's like a last word,
We would be on here for another 30 minutes.
That's true. Okay,
right?
Well, good. I'm going to close this out and basically say that I appreciate all of y'all. I appreciate the work that you do, Naomi, and I appreciate it so much that you wake up every day and you give in this way. We know this is tiring work, so thank you. Thank you for what you do. So Sharif El-Mekki, same thing with you, brother. You are a bright light and you actually give us hope week to week. There's some kind of way that you keep level headed, that you don't go to Chris territory. I don't know what's, like, I don't know what it does that. Like, yeah.
I'm a seething cauldron of conflict. It's inner rage, but this is why, you have a filter. I try to. I've worked really hard over the years to get there.
Yes. I just want to put this out there. There's different Jesuses. My Jesus overturn the money tables. Your Jesus might be out there talking about turn the other cheek and stuff like that, which he did say, but he also overturned the money tables. And he did it quickly, and he did not. Go read the passage. There's no apology in it. I'm sorry, I did that.
Turn to the other cheek part. Turn the other cheek for my brothers, right? Like I'll make. We learn to make 1,000 excuses for our brothers.
That's right,
because they love us and there's a good meaning. But as far as like when folks who are racist, there's no cheeks to turn.
No.
Well, I'll put it this way: if you turn the other cheek and they hit that one too, knock their ass out. That should be the thought right there. Just give them maybe one for free. But anyways, I appreciate y'all so much, and everybody who's listening and watching this every day, and especially the ones that come on Fridays. We appreciate you so much for caring so much about this issue, that you give us your breakfast time each morning to talk about this. So again, this has been another episode of our Freedom Friday episode, and you are still not free, but maybe you are freer than you were when we started this conversation an hour and 9 minutes ago. And we appreciate you so much. Share